guys, Tiffany here from Tiffany Gordon Cosplay with a special guest today, my sister,
Jessie!
Yay! And for today's cosplay tutorial, we are going to be going over how to make your very own
Akatsuki robe!
Yes, because she's a big, huge fan of Naruto, and specifically
Itachi!
There you go. And the first piece that we're going to be working on for this robe is the clouds. And if you'd like to use the same blueprint for the clouds that I'm going to be using, it is available on my website, www.tiffanygordoncosplay.com, or see the link below. This blueprint contains two different sides of the clouds, a small version and a large version. So we first cut it out and then pinned it onto white fabric, followed by tracing it with a pencil and then cutting it out with scissors. In total, you should have 4 clouds, 2 of the small size and 2 of the large size. Then you're gonna go back to the original cloud blueprint and cut out the detail line around all of it using an X-Acto knife. Next, you'll again repeat by pinning the cloud onto red fabric, and then you're going to trace it and cut it out again using scissors. And here's what all of your pieces should look like so far. Both the red and the white fabric were a little bit fray around the edges, so to stop this from happening, I went around each of the cloud edges using fray check. This will help prevent any of the threads from coming apart. And when all of the fray check has dried, then you're going to pin the red cloud to the white cloud in place. Now to start sewing your clouds. You're going to want to be using a universal sewing machine needle for this project. And to first start off, we're going to be using a straight stitch with your needle on the right side, sewing all of the red cloud to the white as close as possible to the edge. This is just going to be a tack stitch. And for me and my sister, we didn't quite get too close to the edge, so we did have to go back with scissors and trim so that way the stitch was as close as possible to the edge. Jessie, how do you think the clouds look like so far?
The clouds look real good. They look like nice. They look real.
Now back to the sewing machine. And this time we're going to be using a stretch stitch, which is also called a lightning bolt stitch. Again, going all around all of the red edges of the cloud. This will give you an embroidery-like look. Now to talk about how we made the black part of the robe. For this process, I used my dress form, and then we draped black fabric on top, pinning it to the neck part and cutting it so I had enough fabric to wrap halfway around the dress form. I next used a piece of masking tape to use as a guide for where the center of this piece was, and slowly using scissors started to cut out the shape of the back of the robe. This does not include sleeves, and this does not include the collar at this time. And when I was happy with the one side of the robe, I then took it off, laid it on the ground, and folded it in half to mirror onto the opposite side. And here's what the back of the robe shape looked like so far. Now to do the front part of the jacket. For this, again, I used masking tape to use as a guideline where the robe was going to open. Then got more black fabric, and we held the fabric up to the dress form, pinned it in place, and then I cut it using scissors to have enough material to go to the side. Then I pinned the fabric to the back part of the robe and slowly cut the robe to how I wanted it. To make sure the front part of the robe matched with the back side, pinned it in place, and then trimmed the extra pieces as well as the bottom to the length that we wanted it. For the other side of the front part of the robe, we also mirrored it with the front panel and cut it slightly shorter so that way it would line where our guideline was on the dress form. And here's what the 3 black panels of the robe look like. This robe also had a red inner liner to the whole piece, so we pinned all of our black panels onto red fabric and then cut it out again using scissors. And here's the 3 red panels. The next step was to pin all 3 of the panels together, doing the 2 front panels pinning on the sides as well as at the shoulders. And we also repeated this for the red panels. And then we went to the sewing machine and stitched these pieces together using a straight stitch and our needle on the left side. And for locking our edges in place, we then went back with an overcasting stitch, and this made it so you would no longer have frayed edges and you would have extra strength. Now to decide where to place the clouds. For this process, we started by putting the robe on a dress form, and Jessie chose the placement of where she wanted the small back cloud to be. We pinned it in place. We also did the same process for the larger side clouds. Side note, we are only going to be doing these 3 clouds as of right now, and later on in this tutorial we'll be doing the front one as the very last step for completing our robe. For attaching the clouds to the black part of the robe, we went back with a lightning bolt stitch around all of the white edges to give that embroidery-like look again. And here's what the robe looks like so far. The next step is going to be pinning the red liner to the black part of the robe. For this, you'll want both the black and the red part of the robe, their seams to be facing outward. And then you'll pin around the sides and the bottom, leaving the collar part and the sleeve holes unpinned. And then sewed the panels together using a straight stitch with the needle on the left, and then going back with an overcasting stitch to secure all of your edges. Once all of your pieces are sewn, then flip it inside out. We then went around all of the seams that we had just stitched and pinned them flat. And then went back to the sewing machine and used a straight stitch, but this time the needle on the right. You want the stitch to be as close to the edge as possible. This process is a little tedious, but it will make your robe look 10 times better in the end. Without doing this process, all of your robe pieces will be poofy and won't lay flat. By doing this, everything will look professional and will lay flat and look really, really good. After that was done, we then pinned the sleeve sections together as well as the collar section together, and sewed them using a straight stitch and our needle on the left, as well as using the overcasting stitch afterwards. Now to figure out the sleeves. For this step, Jessie put on the robe, and I got a sewing tape measure and made a circle around her wrist to figure out the size that she wanted for the end part of the sleeves. As well as getting the length, I put the tape measure to the top of her shoulder and held it down until she said how far she wanted the sleeves to go past her hands. And the final measurement that I got was the sleeve hole of the robe. For these sleeves, we are also going to be doing a red liner, so everything will be doubled up in the end. We first started off by cutting a rectangle, with one part being the length from the shoulder to the bottom of the sleeve, and then the other side being the length of the opening at the bottom of the sleeve. Next, I folded the rectangle in half, hot dog style, marked my measurement of the armhole on the top, traced the curvature of the sleeve hole, and with the help of a ruler drew my straight line from the top to the bottom. And then after that was done, pinned the pieces in place and cut it out using scissors. Your final shape should look similar to a bell. The next step was to pin one piece of the black to the red, this time leaving the curvature part at the top unpinned. And sewed these two pieces together using a straight stitch with the needle on the left, followed by our overcasting stitch to lock the two in place. Once that part was done, then we flipped it inside out, And again, went around all of the edges, pinning them flat. And sewing in place using a straight stitch, and this time our needle on the right side. At this time, we also went around the top curvature part, sewing the two pieces together as well. Now that the sleeve section is fully closed all the way around, we folded it in half with the red side on the outside and pinned the seam in place. Followed by stitching together with a straight stitch, needle on the left, and following up with our overcasting stitch. Yay, the sleeve is done! Now to pin it to the sleeve jacket hole. And next to sew it together using a straight stitch, needle on the left, and once again, the overcasting stitch. And here's what the robe looks like as of right now. For figuring out the collar, we first placed the robe on a dress form, and using a sewing measuring tape, went around the neck and measured how long it was going to be. Ideally, we would have preferred the collar to taper out at the top, but we kinda ran out of fabric, so we had to use whatever scraps we had left of the red. And for the collar, we ended up just making it a straight rectangle and cut it out using a rotary tool. Again, mirroring it onto the black fabric so we could have a red liner on the inside. For the collar, we're going to pin it onto 2 of the short sides and 1 of the long side, and sewed the 3 sides together using a straight stitch and the needle on the left. Once that was done, we flipped the collar inside out, pinned the 3 edges flat, and sewed together using a straight stitch and the needle on the right. And then finished off the collar, sewing it closed with a straight stitch, needle on the left, followed by an overcasting stitch. Once that was done, we then pinned the collar to the top section of the jacket. This way all of the red was facing the same direction. And then once again, sewed it together, straight stitch, needle on the left, followed by an overcasting stitch. For the red lining on the front part of the jacket, we ended up using a red double folded bias tape and pinned the red bias tape so that way the black was in between the 2 red sections. For this, you want to sew it with a straight stitch and then your needle on the left side so that way it is close to the edge as possible. Now, to figure out the placement of the front cloud. For this, we put the robe on Jessie and pinned it closed so she could not escape, and then figured out where we wanted the placement of the front cloud to be, pinning that to the robe. After that, Jessie somehow got free, and we ended up going and cutting the cloud in half using scissors. Followed by using a fray check on the part that we just cut so that way the fibers don't fray. And along the edge that we just trimmed, used a lightning bolt stitch to give that nice clean finish. After that was done, we then repinned it back to the robe so that way the now sewn edge was flush to the red bias tape. And then sewed the 2 halves of the cloud to the robe. First starting off with a lightning bolt stitch as close to the red bias tape as possible, so this way our cloud will not shift, and then went around the edge of the cloud on the white part, again with a lightning bolt stitch. For all of the clouds that we've sewn, this will be the only one that you will see the stitching on the inside of the robe. And the final step for making the robe was to hand stitch 12 snaps on both sides of the robe. And Jessie, was it fun doing that?
No, it was awful.
Okay, well, good luck doing it for y'all. All that is left now is to put on your Akatsuki robe, do all of your snaps in the front, and then you are ready to look cool in your Akatsuki robe from Naruto. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching this cosplay tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it. I know my sister absolutely loves her robe, and she'll be able to do whatever she wants with it now and all of her hand signs. Like, which ones are your favorite?
Oh, ox and horse and rat and that's it.
There you go. So I hope y'all also will enjoy making your very own Akatsuki robe, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And don't forget to like the tutorial and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you for our next one. Much love, guys.